Okay.
Yeah. That's okay that we skipped introductions but
Okay.
yes. Okay, go.
Well, so just thank you, everybody, for the opportunity. And most importantly, Karen, thank you for the continued partnership with WestRock for us to support this ambassador program. It really is great. I've had the pleasure of meeting current and past alumni. We've had some come out to our facility for tours. So it's been a really great program over the past couple of years. So happy to do it continued. My name is Laura Veldman. I'll gladly be the presenter here today. And ultimately, my role at WestRock is all about bringing material to our facility. So we obviously partner with Louisville Metro, and the various materials collection that they do throughout the community all comes to our facility, as well as we work with private haulers and direct with businesses. So we do provide commercial recycling services, and that's really where Karen and I do a lot of our work in working directly with businesses to either create or improve their recycling program. So with that, I'll gladly also introduce my colleague Karen Brown here as well.
Hello, everyone. I'm Karen Brown. I've been with WestRock in the printing and packaging division for 24 years. So I definitely understand recycling from that end, from the manufacturing and end user. Recycled materials are definitely high in demand. People want, 30% post-consumer waste, 100% post-consumer waste. There's definitely a demand for that. As far as packaging goes, I can attest to that. I've been with the recycling division since December, so I'm learning the other side of it. So I'm happy to be here to learn and grow in this new position, and I appreciate the invitation. Thank you so much.
All right, wonderful. Well, with that, I'll go ahead and get into video share here, and we will get underway. Go. Okay, great. Can you all see my screen okay? Oop, as I just clicked ahead. All right. So again, as we've mentioned, we're with WestRock. This is just some nice stats about WestRock as a company. We do have 18 recycling facilities across the country. With this presentation, obviously, is more geared to Louisville and what's taking place here at our facility. But to spend just a little bit more time to understand WestRock as a company, we're what's called an integrative recycling company. This infographic here I find to be the best way to really be able to identify that, and being that, again, we're at the top of the circle here in the recycling division. We sort and separate all different types of materials, but all of the cardboard and mixed paper that is recovered in our facility at Louisville, along with all of the other 18 17 recycling facilities within WestRock, all of the cardboard and mixed paper, you can kind of see some of the bales here, go on to WestRock paper mills. So we truly consume our own fiber as a company, which is really great because it gives our recycling division stability and always being able to send material to WestRock paper mills. But then it also gives stability to our paper mills because they have 18 recycling facilities constantly getting them material. They also, of course, work directly with customers as well. Our 18 facilities wouldn't be able to feed our full 32 mill system, but gives you an understanding of, again, where that cardboard and paper is going. Then continuing on that WestRock loop is the box or packaging division, which again is where Karen previously was a part of. And so those WestRock paper mills create these great large rolls, and then the box plants is actually what creates the new respective packaging product for our customers, who then put their items into those boxes, and then we as consumers then now buy those items and ideally recycle the box at completion, right? So again, this just kind of gives you that really great visual of the circular economy that WestRock has created for itself. And again, great opportunity for our cardboard and paper to stay internal. All of the other materials that we've recovered are continued to be recycled. They're just sold outside of the WestRock system. But this gives you a nice visual of the many products that WestRock creates. This is just some quick visuals, but I'll highlight here because this tends to be one of our primary questions of pizza boxes being recycled. And I'm proud to say that WestRock is actually North America's largest pizza box producer. So we actually build and make pizza boxes in our packaging division. And so, of course, we want to have those recycled, but that is a common question, kind of common confusion in the recycling industry. And so really wanting to highlight the ability to recycle those pizza boxes regardless of grease and cheese that may be smeared in there. And we'll talk a lot more about specifics of acceptable materials here coming up. I always like to highlight the pizza boxes when talking about WestRock. All right, so with that, I'll kind of take the pause and just really want to stress the importance from here forward. The presentation is really specifically to the Louisville area. Now, that's not just specifically the Louisville Metro Urban Service District where Metro services take place, but we do receive material all across the county and outside of the county too, right? We work a lot with Southern Indiana communities, but it is important to say that recycling is relatively regional, right? And so it's all of the answers to, is this recyclable or not, common questions, really is specific to where's your material going. So I just really want to help highlight, and obviously this team's already done the deep dive into the waste world to know that it is dependent on what is generated and what can be recovered in our specific area based off of our facility and what we're able to sort and then sell on for recyclables. So with that on our screen here, again, just happy to highlight the acceptable materials list of items: cardboard, really all types of paper, plastics numbers 1 through 7, aluminum, which includes aluminum cans and aluminum foil, aluminum trays. Then we've got tin cans, a few others in the mix here, but also happy to highlight aerosol cans can go as well, along with glass. And in particular, different colored glass is more than fine as well. Now, what we do want to highlight is that it is container glass. So we don't want like your broken window, right? That's a glass that has much more strength embedded in it for creation. And so we really want to be sure that we stick with that category of container glass when it comes to recycling in your curbside recyclables. So all that mixed material will ultimately get collected in your curbside bin or maybe at one of the drop-off sites throughout the community and come to our facility all mixed together, and then we sort and separate out by material type. So just to talk a little bit further about those material types, our fiber category here of cardboard and paper, just best practices is, of course, breaking down your boxes, but the easy way to kind of educate on this is simply all paper that tears. And for this, I always use the example of a windowed envelope, which you can see in my pile of mixed papers here. That little bit of plastic in a windowed envelope is minimal, right? There's very little plastic in comparison to the amount of paper that comprises the actual envelope itself. And if you needed to, you could rip through a windowed envelope. So that kind of gives it that tear test, easy way to go about it. But what you could think of as kind of the opposite of that, of having too much plastic in the mix, would be a laminated piece of paper. So if you ever tried to rip a laminated sheet of paper or a poster board, yeah, some of you might be able to do it when you really put some muscle behind it, but it's not that simple, true tear test. So that's kind of the way I always encourage people to think about it. If you can tear it, it's got enough paper in it to recycle it. And then getting into food and beverage containers, you can see this is all different types of materials. So we got a combination here of plastics, different papers, again, into the aluminum. But this all falls into that category of food and beverage containers, which I find really important to simplify the language. Again, see, with your spirit of signage is really important, but we all know that if there's a whole lot of wording to a sign, people stop reading, maybe even right at the beginning, because they can't even be bothered, right? So pictures are always really helpful, but then also just simple language. So the terminology of food and beverage containers really helps encompass, again, paper, plastics, metals, and even glass. So again, that's kind of the piece on my visuals, but to really highlight the importance here, and again, kind of going back to the pizza box scenario, is we do encourage the last serving of food or drink to be removed. So to really think about that more specifically, it's the grease and cheese in a pizza box is not an issue for us. That fiber, the box itself, can definitely be recycled. But where it can be a challenge is if you have a whole slice of pizza, or maybe your dipping sauce is still in the box. That amount of food waste can cause us challenge. We don't want to have the material kind of starting its kind of downgrade process, if you will, because of food waste in the mix. So it is really important to remove the last serving of food or drink. I also use the example here of a yogurt container because residual food is fine. So as we've all had a yogurt container and you get the last actual bite, but then there's some left around the rim of that container, and that's fine. That residue is nominal in comparison to an actual bite or two left of the material, or worst case scenario, expired food being tossed into the recycling because it's in a plastic recycling container. We really do need to educate everybody to remove the food or drink from the container, but you don't have to rinse everything in order for it to be recycled. Now, of course, if you want to rinse things because that's the better method for your own practice at home, we of course welcome it and appreciate things to be cleaner. But our intention really is to divert as much material that can be recycled. We want to divert that from landfill. So we know that we got to make the general public make it nice and easy. So again, that's why we don't require things to be rinsed. But for your own practice, if you prefer it, I welcome it. Right. Any questions on that? Just out of the gate? Okay. So on that note, also common questions are about plastic bags. So at WestRock, we do accept plastic bags, but we, along with Louisville Metro, really encourage loose material to be collected. We don't prefer bags to be used, but if we do, we want it to be either a clear plastic bag or even a white plastic bag. That's a kind of more common for what you can find for like a kitchen size trash bag. The other option, again, what we more so encourage is just put your recyclables just directly inside your recycling cart. And the reason is twofold. First and foremost, the reason why we do not accept black bags is because for a safety standpoint, as you'll see here momentarily, we're going to kind of take a virtual tour of our recycling facility. And we do have team members that are staged throughout the sort line that are tasked to actually help open and empty plastic bags. So from a safety standpoint, we want them to see where they're putting their hands and what they're reaching into. The other component is if you more so in an office building, so just kind of speaking about it more in the scenario of office or campus-like setting, typically you have a trash can and a recycling can side by side. If both are utilizing black bags and a custodian is to go through the building and empty all the in building containers, if both bags are in black plastic, that custodian's going to empty both up and then they have to take them to the dumpster outside of the building. How would they remember which one was black bag with recycling and which was a black bag with traditional trash? So again, from a color coding standpoint, we find that clear black bag system also really helps in that office setting. But again, we prefer not to get plastic bags because we don't recycle them. So it's always better for us to keep our trash to a minimum. So again, why we have aligned with Metro in the language of just collect your material loose inside your cart.
I actually have a question.
Please go for it.
So Susan with Eagle Paper, we actually sell can liners to all of those businesses.
Oh, okay.
Hi. Hello.
Hi.
And I love the aspect of the clear versus black and so forth. So here's my next question. So there's has always been a push for either green tinted bags
Yep.
or compostable bags that are that can be in a myriad of colors: brown, black, clear, opaque
Sure.
green. But the green bags that people want, like not green as in like recycled or whatnot, but the
No, they're
actual
like
color green,
Mhm.
if they are not opaque, which a lot of these aren't because they have to be stronger,
Mhm.
are those tossed?
Yeah, most often no, because here's the other piece to it. For the most part, the bags actually already rip open in transit and in our beginning of sort process. So it's not the most common for our team to have to just be opening a bag brand new on its own. They're more so trying to empty out the contents from those bags and get the material on the sort line and then throw the bag away. We educate that all colors are acceptable other than black. So yes, I know exactly what kind of bags you're talking about with kind of that translucent look. And there are some blues I can think of specifically from some of our customers that are quite dark, but it's not a navy blue that can kind of get, thought to be black. So no, we work kind of with all colors other than black, I guess is the simple way to answer that question.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, great. Any other questions while we're at that part? It is intended to be a conversation. Again, I will kind of give you a big presentation and then we'll have more discussion at the end as well. But thank you, Susan, for your question right when it's fresh. All right. Oh, there we go. All right. So here we'll hang for a little bit because this might be where more questions lie. But here's kind of the most common contamination items when it comes to commercial single stream. So I'll point out right out of the gate here, our yard waste category and even some hazardous waste can and should be recycled properly. There are methods of collection for those items. They're just not to be mixed in with your residential single stream, kind of mixed recycling or curbside. So bathroom waste, food waste, medical waste, really those kind of fall in that same category of just, it's true trash. Again, you have now explained that we have staff on the sort line. So from a health and safety standpoint, they shouldn't be exposed to any of those items. And again, it's not materials that we can recover. Again, yard waste can and should be composted, collected separately. Definitely, again, not in the same container as your traditional recycling. Compost and recycling are two different things. But then getting into styrofoam. This is a common question we receive because, as you can see, most styrofoam actually is stamped with that number 6, which falls into our category of plastics 1 through 7. So we have that caveat, plastics 1 through 7, except for styrofoam. And not all number 6s are styrofoam. So again, that's why we kind of have to make that statement of the full range of 1 through 7s, but we exclude styrofoam. And we don't accept that for twofold. Number one, it's very difficult to sort through our equipment. Again, as I'll be explaining a lot more in depth, but we're sorting by size and shape. So we're moving and agitating the material a lot. And as we've all held a styrofoam cup a little too hard before, and it easily breaks, right? So we really can't sort styrofoam correctly, but also we don't have an outlet for recycled styrofoam. So even if we were to sort it correctly, we don't have a home for it. So it's not a material that we can accept and recycle. There is a place, and Karen, please correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not sure if you all are maybe talking about those hard to recycle items later in the program, but there is a facility in Southern Indiana called Foam Fabricators who will accept small amounts of packaging styrofoam. So like if you've gotten a new TV and it comes with those wedges in there to keep it secured within the box, they can take that kind of foam. But again, nothing that WestRock wants anything to do with any type of foam. All right. And then grocery bags, again, to kind of pivot off of the acceptable plastic bags, as previously mentioned, but ultimately grocery bags are their own entity. As we can all feel the difference, they are much thinner. And these items can and should be recycled, but again, collected separately. They can go back to most big box stores to be made into more bags like this. But for us, we really want to avoid them coming to us because, again, most often they rip open during transit. So we get the material that may be in there, but then we're stuck with this very lightweight, thin bag that is most often now at this point ripped open enough to where it's kind of become a long, thin item, and it falls into this category that we've got listed as my last bullet point here of tanglers. So again, we're rotating material through our sort system. And so anything that tangles or gets wrapped around things easily can really be a big detriment to our operation. Unfortunately, we get them and we do have to deal with them, but we really want to avoid even receiving them from the start. So that is why they are listed on that not acceptable materials list, or they are contamination, because again, those grocery store bags inevitably get wrapped around our gears. And then as you can see in the list here, again, ropes, wires, string lights, hoses, anything that kind of falls into that same size and shape category of long and lean and easy to wrap around stuff. We really want to avoid that, because I'm sure, as you can all respect, we all know that powering a machine down is the healthy way to deal with it, instead of it just coming to a grinding halt because something got wrapped around it. So we really want to avoid any of those materials coming to us. And that being said, I'm proud to say that our community here of customers does a really good job. We actually, although we are constantly educating about tanglers, we don't have too much of a pain point with tanglers, but we got to keep that education up. So that's why I want to stress and highlight a good bit of it in this conversation, because you all are now the ambassadors out into the community, right? To be able to share this information with your family and friends and coworkers. And so we really want to ensure that people understand why these items aren't recyclable. And again, that tangler category can really be a pain point. So that being said, I will point out that wires and string lights fall into that electronics waste, along with our bulbs and batteries. And Louisville Metro, again, Karen, I'm even just going to pause and ask you, have you all addressed kind of what all happens at the Waste Reduction Center and all of those items for drop off?
Not specifically, I don't think.
Okay,
We've
not yet.
we have mentioned some drop-off opportunities.
Okay, well,
But
so
yeah.
electronics, which again includes like all computer parts, wires, even your out of use charger that got maybe phased out because a port changed. All those kind of wires can be recycled, and it is recycled through WestRock, but Louisville Metro has the great service as an offering to our community members of being able to drop those materials off at the Waste Reduction Center there with the Louisville Metro Public Works. And string lights, even holiday lights, fall into that same category. I know we're a little bit removed from the holiday season now, but in case you had some strands that didn't actually make it through the holiday year or aren't going to held on to until next year, those items can and should be recycled, but again, not in your curbside collection, but can go to that Waste Reduction Center as well, which includes bulbs and batteries too. We really, really need to avoid receiving any type of battery to our recycling facility, because as you'll see in my next slide here, we'll get into the recycling facility. We got a lot of paper, we got a lot of burnable material. And so batteries are the #1 cause for fires at recycling facilities. So again, really need to stress the importance that we do not receive and recycle any type of battery. Those can be recycled by a different vendor that Louisville Metro has an arrangement with and is able to recover those materials. So again, want to highlight all those items. Any questions on contamination or not acceptable materials? Okay. All right, so let's take a tour. As I mentioned, we receive a lot through Louisville Metro, but again, we also work with private waste haulers in town too. So depending on your service area and what community you're in, depends on how we receive your material. But if it's in Louisville Metro, we're most likely receiving it, which we take a great sense of pride in. As you can see here now, we're welcome to WestRock on our tour. This is our tip floor where the material gets unloaded from those trucks that you just saw. This size will vary. The amount of material will vary. We just are kind of coming towards the end of peak season, because as you can imagine, holiday time really does increase a lot more material, which is great. We're happy to be able to receive it. But as you can see, everything's all mixed together here, right? You can see all different types of these materials as it then is going to run through our system and land in its respective pile. It begins here first by loading that material in with a front loading truck that ultimately will take a big scoop of material and put it into what's called a drum feeder. So this is an enclosed piece of equipment that the material starts to go on its conveyor ride down through this area you can see with my arrows here. That drum feeder could be thought of as like a water wheel. So it is a very large rotating wheel with panels, and those panels have teeth, which is where that first line of defense is on ripping open or breaking open the plastic bags. Those panels also help spread the material to be nice and flat on the conveyor, because as it makes its way up, we have the next area called the pre-sort. So we've got team members on the sort line here, so they can see that material across the conveyor. It's not coming in big clumps like it would if we didn't have that drum feeder step. They are tasked to remove items that don't belong. So again, pulling out those plastic bags, hopefully removing any tanglers if we see them coming down the line. We also will be looking for items that can be recycled, but we just don't want them to run through the entire sort line. So that would be some like scrap metal items. I always use an example here of like a 5-gallon bucket, like usually like a kitty litter bucket would be a residential item that you might have like that. It's a good plastic, but it's large, and plastics is actually the last material of the sort line. So a bucket like that has to make its way all the way through the whole system. And because it's large, it might knock into other items and just kind of get in the way. So our team here at the pre-sort will also work towards pulling out some of those items and getting them still into the right place to be recycled, but just not having it run all the way through the equipment. They're a great team here that work really hard with multiple tasks to be mindful of. All right, from here, again, as I mentioned, we're sorting by size and shape. And I know my slide here is identifying cardboard, but I'm actually going to take a pause here and speak to glass. So we are accepting and do recycle and recover glass in your curbside material. But it is in our facility in an enclosed kind of basement level, if you will, of collection. So it's really an area I can't take a picture of, nor really able to show you the equipment, because again, like the drum feeder, it's enclosed. But we have a glass crusher that is kind of right down below here where you would be standing if you were standing at our facility. And so we use gravity to our advantage here, glass being one of the heavier materials of the mix of materials. And the glass, again, by weight, will drop down and go through that glass crusher to then be recovered. And it's a good thing to pull that glass out of our sort line or off of the equipment as soon as possible, because glass is a rough material and does wear down metals even. So we do try to pull that out right away. From there, now onto our cardboard. Again, as I've mentioned a few times now, we sort by size and shape. So the large cardboard pieces, as you can see in our pile here that's been recovered, these cardboard items are going to come across this conveyor and go over these. They are in constant rotation. I call them fingers. You can kind of see as they move. It's almost like a series of filters, because the large stuff's going to go up and over, small stuff's going to drop down between the spaces here and continue its ride through the sort system. So we're sorting by size and shape, pulling the large stuff first, and then all the smaller stuff will keep riding through the system before it gets through its portion of the filter. All right. So again, continuing our efforts here now, focusing in on mixed paper. You can see this screen here is very much like the previous one, but now you can see these teeth are smaller and tighter together, right? So again, the paper now is going to go up and over, and all of the smaller items are going to drop down. So again, on this list here, or on this visual here, you can see most all the large cardboard's taken out, but we got a little bit of smaller pieces of cardboard that made its way through. So they'll go in with the mixed paper and be recovered. From here, again, using method of agitation, we've got a bounce belt. So just as the name would allude, it literally is a conveyor that bounces. And this is really great for separating paper from containers. Again, using weight and gravity to our advantage here. The bounce belt, the containers will be heavier. So as they drop down, they will roll down the bounce belt and also bounce off of the belt. But you can see there's lots of different containers all in my pictures here, whereas the paper is lightweight and will bounce up and go up the conveyor to land in its respective pile. So another great way to, again, agitate and move that material along and separate by type. So this just shows you a nice clean pile of paper coming off of that conveyor line. We actually have 3 methods of efforts to separate out the mixed paper. Again, just kind of continuing to rotate the material through the system so we can really pull as much paper as possible off the end of the conveyors, leaving all of the containers left to continue to sort. So from there, we then use a very large magnet on a rotating conveyor. And so as the mix of containers, which again, just to do a material check-in at this point, we've pulled the glass, we've pulled the cardboard, now all the paper has been removed. So you're left with tin cans, all types of aluminum, and then all types of plastics. So this magnet will pull that tin can up off of the conveyor and then drop it into its respective pile after passing over the magnet. Now, an eddy current is what we use to separate the aluminum. The tin cans attract to a magnet, and an eddy current repels away from, or aluminum repels away from the eddy current. So just as a magnet attracts, an eddy current presses away using magnetic force. And this one's a really great one to get to see in person. It's kind of incredible on how well it reads. But all of the plastics and aluminum are running on this conveyor here. As it passes that eddy current, it makes the aluminum cans literally jump off of the conveyor. You can see one midair here and one right down here. There's a wall that separates these two this two area. The plastics will run off of the conveyor, not triggered by the eddy current, and just drop to the end, continuing the ride through the system. And those aluminum pieces are going to jump far out and land onto this conveyor here. We then have a team member who would be standing right here off of screen and able to do a hand sort or separation of the aluminum cans from the aluminum foil. So all the aluminum foil and pie pans all will get collected together, and then the aluminum cans are their own method of collection, or of their own material to bale, which nice visual here. I always find that the metals is so visually appealing. So just to show you some nice clean piles of the aluminum cans and then the tin cans that we recover here. So as I mentioned, the plastics are the last item to get sorted here. And so those ultimately are going to run, again, drop past that eddy current and run onto this conveyor you see here. And then this piece of equipment is called a dual optical sort. It is dual because it is programmed to read for two different types of plastics. And those are your plastics number 1s and number 2s. Number 1 is the PET or plastic water bottle that we're most all familiar with. And you can see some just on the far end of my picture here. And then the number 2 plastics are your HDPE plastics. Again, those are your out of all containers, 1s and 2s are most commonly used. So an optical sort, just as the name would allude, uses light for optics. And that light you can see shining right here on our conveyor. That light will read the type of plastic that the container is made of, and then it will send a burst of air accordingly to the item to go onto the respective directions. So the PET gets up onto this lifted conveyor and then drops into its respective pile. If it's a number 2 plastic, again, a burst of air will blow it onto this conveyor that will actually run to the left-hand side and continue for just a little bit longer at the end of the line here. And then our 3 through 7s are one commodity in of themselves. We don't separate our 3 through 7s any further. We do have an outlet that takes those 3 through 7s mixed and is able to recycle those. So we are separating 1s and 2s, and then the 3 through 7s is its own blend. But those number 2, as I mentioned, that we continue to go through a little bit more on the journey through the sort line. And that is because they passed this robot, which we've got a nice little short video here to show how that robot is programmed to sort and recover. Now that one's a white jug there, but I think we've got one coming there. We've got one right here in our video there. That is a milk jug. So it's that clear, cloudy plastic that is a natural as opposed to a colored plastic. And that has a little bit of a higher value because there's no pigment already in the container, which, interesting enough, white, a true plastic white container, that is actually considered a true color. It's not that natural pigment-free plastic. So we do use this robot to separate the 2 different types of number 2s because there is a greater value. So it does give us a little bit of a financial advantage. That being said, though, if the robot misses, which it does, it's not perfect, just like humans, and it will just run to the end of the sort line or to the end of this conveyor, which is all where the HDPE color is going. So it's still getting recycled. We've just left a few cents on the table, so to say. The robot doesn't get it, but it's pretty neat technology. As I've learned a lot about this robot, it is AI technology that is continuing to learn and improve over time. It was initially uploaded with about 3,000 images of HDPE natural containers in all different size, shape, condition, right? Like wear and tear and compression. But lots of different images to what it would look like for the robot to see and trigger for that right item. But now that it's been installed and working for over a year, it's learned and improved over that time by simply seeing our local mix, right? The actual containers that it's triggering here. So it's pretty neat to me that it tracks its success and its misses and will continue to get better and better over time. All right. So with that, continuing. So that's the end of the sort line itself. I guess I have to let the little video run through. Sorry, I won't click to the next slide. There we go. All right. So as I mentioned, we're separating everything, but we don't actually create anything at our facility beyond these bales, right? So we're doing a lot of processing and sorting, but then we bale up each different type of material. As you can see, a cardboard bale here. This is all mixed paper, again, things that have been recovered off of the sort line. Here's a bale of HDPE colored materials, again, wide variety of colors, which does include white. But we are generating these bales and then loading them up to ship out to whether it's a WestRock paper mill or again, an external buyer of our material. I always like to also highlight this picture in particular because it is a rail car, as we do have rail access at our facility in Louisville, which is really great and beneficial because we have several paper mills that also have rail access. So we're able to ship a lot by rail directly to WestRock paper mills for our cardboard and mixed paper. And we're able to get the contents of 3 semi-trucks into 1 rail car. So as you can imagine, we really want to ship as much as possible by rail to really maximize by weight, but then of course also keeping trucks off of the road, right? And mitigating some of that traffic and utilizing rail as much as possible is great too. All right. So just wanting to kind of address the familiar signage here of Louisville Metro's acceptable materials. And again, just to highlight the common items that we don't want to receive. Again, I find this image and language all kind of perfectly succinct. And again, it gives that visual awareness. Again, we don't want any cords or this particular type of plastic bags. Again, types of materials kind of by simple language and again, great examples. So again, I think this is a great resource that Metro has had for a while. And again, kind of serves on all the highlights. Right. And then the other service I wanted to highlight that we have here is a commercial compost program. So we work with businesses to be able to have them collect their food waste separately from all their other materials. And then we are able to receive that material and actually send it on to Smith Creek, which is in southern Indiana. And Smith Creek is actually who also receives all of Louisville Metro's yard waste. And so they'll take all your leaves and sticks along with our food waste from our commercial customers and mix that in the bottom picture. There it is. The bottom picture here just gives you a nice visual of the size and scope that they're working with there at their facility. And ultimately they make soil amendments and mulches. So they are exclusively a wood and food waste recycling facility or compost facility that does a really great operation to make soil and mulches. And what I find really great about this as well with Smith Creek is that they sell that material back to some of the big box stores in our community. So if you buy mulch from Lowe's or Home Depot or even Thornton's gas stations, during the seasons when they carry mulch at the gas stations, but all that comes from Smith Creek. It's not in their label. They're not really in the retail arm of things. They sell most of their material onto Scott's, and so anything with the Scott's brand bag from our area or of stores in our area is from Smith Creek. So it is a circular loop. It just changes ownership names a lot. All right. So again, this is a really great program that we have that especially serves for large food waste generators like the universities. We work with the casino over the river. So Not to say that we can't do it with restaurants too. We do have a few, but really large food waste generators, hospitals, things like that are really great customers for this program because there's a great cost savings opportunity there to divert that material from landfill. All right. Okay, great. So I'll see if my video will go off of the link here, but this video is to just share a little highlight of, no, it went this way. I don't think it's going to come up. Hang tight for me. I'm going to pull up my next bit. There we go. This is just a short little 2-minute video just to highlight again WestRock's circular system of fiber and just gives you some nice paper recycling facts. So again, curbside materials, she should flatten her box. We all know it. So this is not our actual recycling facility in Louisville. This is WestRock in Atlanta where this was filmed, but very similar equipment. Again, very much, again, sorting by size and shape, hand pulling some of the, again, most often it's the soft plastics that we're really pulling to avoid any level of contamination in with the true materials. But it's nice to be able to see it in action, how it rotates. There's the eddy current and how those aluminum cans jump further out. And baled material is our finished product. And then from there, those bales of cardboard and again, mixed paper would be the items that we'd be shipping from WestRock recycling facilities onto WestRock paper mills. And this is the pulping process that starts at the paper mills. So again, you can see how there's a little bit of some other things beyond cardboard in that mix, but fortunately that the mill systems have improved their cleaning process to really be able to not get hung up on those little bits of outthrows. I find this video is also a nice time to highlight the size of a paper mill in comparison to a recycling facility. They work on a very, very large scale to create these fiber rolls to then be made on to new product. And then from there, those rolls are heading on to the various box plants and then make those into their respective size and size, shape, style need for our fiber customers. And again, then the new box is back out into the community and to be recycled again. Wonderful. Oh, sorry. Go back to here. Oh, now that's, I thought I had one more slide there, but that's the end of that portion of the presentation. I do have a few more items to kind of discuss but I'd like to pause here and just ask if there's any questions at this point. Okay, great. Well, then I'm going to pull up one other file here. Just again, as we've talked a good bit about styrofoam and plastic bags, this is again one of the. Oh, go right ahead.
Yeah, I have one question. I was wondering about the takeout materials. I was just wondering if there was any restaurants or companies that collect it or offer any type of program where they like incentivize people to return the stuff?
Great question. A great idea to have that as a service available. There's not any that I'm aware of for restaurants. I can say that the University of Louisville does have a program like that. They have um, a to-go container that you ultimately, I think it's like you have to buy it for $5, but then it's something to where you can bring it to any of the various dining services on campus and they can fill it with the respective food. So I know it happens on a university campus.
I've seen that.
That'd be
I've
great for it to be in restaurants.
had it. I've seen that at Ohio, the same program at Ohio Wesleyan as well.
Nice. Yeah. I'm
But yeah,
sure it
but I was
serves
also,
students well.
yeah, I was kind of thinking about the like as far as like the drink containers or the cardboard carriers and things
Oh,
like that.
absolutely. Again, not that I'm aware of is any type of
Okay.
established program, but that's a perfect lead in here, John, to really remind everybody of the 3 R's, back to the true original sustainability basics, right? Reduce, reuse, and then recycle. And as much as, I work for a recycling company, obviously I'm going to be a big advocate for recycling, but we're at the bottom of that tier for a reason, right? So reducing your waste first and foremost, then reusing materials as much as possible, and then recycling, which technically is reusing the material, but it'd be better before we have to actually, pulp it down and make it into a whole brand new product, right? So yeah, the drink trays, those are never heavily used, right? But they're helpful. So that'd be a great thing to have some type of return program or just simply keep one in your car. So when you get 3 drinks, you can hand it over and say, put them back into this.
Yeah, or
But
especially like also trying to incorporate maybe some sort of more widespread program for like how you were saying with U of L having the cleaning theirs, to have
mhm,
that sort of for all restaurants and have a business off of that.
yeah, I'd love to partner with you, John. Make it happen. Yeah, it certainly would be, again, the reduction would be helpful in every way.
I had spoken last week about when I was in England, noticing that people carry containers in their handbags or whatever, and they collapse down to make them rather small.
Nice.
And that's what they hand the restaurant to put anything that they want to take home with them. I've never actually even seen ones that collapse. I'm sure if I looked on Amazon, there probably are, but people do that in England.
That's great. Absolutely. Yeah, I think, single-use packaging, even if it's made of recyclable material, single-use packaging is intended to be phased out as we grow, right? So I'm sure there will always be a need in case for reasonable amounts of single-use items. But yeah, that's great to hear that England's moving that direction and that the people are on board with doing it, right? Like you see it happening.
Yes, and
Yeah.
it's like not having grocery bags anymore. And I'm from New Zealand, and
Mhm.
the same things in New Zealand. There are no more grocery bags. If you need one, you have to pay for it.
Yeah,
And it is some kind of recyclable. It's not necessarily plastic. And
nice.
people here just it's so hard to get them on board, and that's why um, I'm training my grandkids because I
Yes.
figure by the time they're grown up that they'll be able
Yeah.
to buy into that.
Yeah. I respect that, but I'm also going to say every adult can change too. We're all capable of it, even if we have some resistance to it. So again, it's people like you who are learning and making the effort. And I just encourage you, have the uncomfortable conversation, even if you think it's a person who, they're never open to any change or they're not progressive enough. Don't rule somebody out. They might go, yeah, you're right. Keeping some grocery bags in the back of my car is not that big of a hardship. I can do it. So I'm always the advocate for trying. It's always worth it. And even if it doesn't make a difference for the very next day, in a month from now, it might sink in somebody's head. So yeah. Great. Any other questions?
Yeah, I'd just like to add to that.
Of course, yeah.
I was watching a documentary last night called Bag It, and it was interesting because they were talking about all of those laws, but a lot of countries were passing them in like 2009 and before that, and we're of course now 15 years beyond that, and that's not even a talk in our politics at all.
Yeah, that's it's discouraging. I don't want to get into the prickly topic of
Yeah.
politics here, but yes, John, you are right. It when it really comes down to something that is so very clearly evidence-based that it's not necessary and there are better alternatives in the marketplace, I would appreciate some just rules and regulation coming into place. I mean, I know people don't like all aspects of government infringement, but when it comes to buying power, sometimes just rules and regulations are needed. So,
The problem too is once the regulations are in place, it usually takes like another 10 years before they get implemented.
yeah.
That's a shame.
Fortunately, we are seeing a lot of company initiative, though. You know, there has been a greater push. I'm sorry, I might have the wrong number, so feel free anybody to correct me. But I think Kroger has made the commitment of banning or like discontinuing their offering of having plastic bags by 2030. I might have my year off by that, but I know it was several years ago they announced that they were phasing them out. And again, it takes a long time to actually execute that, but they have set the date, so that makes a big difference. And a lot of corporations are making setting true sustainability goals and having annual reports to hold them on track. And that's not just with plastic bags. So I do think our governments need to catch up a little bit, if you ask me.
Just to touch on that, Laura, I've been in some meetings with Councilwoman Betsy Rui and Brandon Cohn, who was a former council person, but he's like a consultant now, and Kroger. And I think they originally said 2025 on that year. I'm not sure. I
Okay.
think that's still the plan, maybe by the end of 2025. But
Great.
so it seems that they are piloting things out west because it's under
Mm.
different names. It's not always Kroger. It's like,
Right.
they have different
Ralph's, I know,
names.
is out west.
Yeah.
But it's a part of the Kroger system.
So yeah, we're not exactly part of the pilot things going on, but they do plan with their learnings as they implement it through all their stores, all the different things that they decide to do would end up coming here. There's supposed to be some sort of national announcement, I think sometime in March. And so Betsy and Brandon were trying to come up with something that we could do locally in conjunction with that. So that's where there were some meetings.
That's great.
So anyway, it's not like it's a big, huge thing happening here as if we're banning anything, but I am at least glad that some leaders are interested, and we're trying to have these conversations with Kroger, kind of showing like, hey, we're here, we're interested.
We'll be ready to partner when when
Yeah.
it gets to this area.
Yep.
Cool.
And they do have a report that they sent me. If anyone, I guess I'll just send it out. I'll include you. If you feel like reading it, read it. And if not, but that's okay. But I had voiced a question about their plastic bag recycling bins because a lot of people ask me if those bags are really recycled. There's always skepticism. So I just kind of wanted something that I could say, well, here's what I got from Kroger,
Yeah, what'd they say?
So that indeed they are sent back to back for recycling. Let me find that email. I'll forward it on. I know they made a point to say if you're familiar with their bins or it's kind of a barrel shape, that they wrapped the barrels on purpose because I guess they had an issue with people moving signs and kind of a sign getting separated from the barrel. So wrapping and I thought, well, that makes sense. That's a good learning. That wrapping the actual barrel means there's no mistake. That's the container. And then that those bags are recycled into composite lumber. I think their website says that somewhere. And decking, like things that uses a little bit of plastic in it to make boards. So it was good to at least get something official.
Yeah,
So
I appreciate hearing that
yeah.
because I always, I guess, like shamelessly promote Kroger because they
Mhm.
do they accept a wider variety of those soft bag plastics beyond just the grocery bag,
Yes.
as you see here. You know, they do like the dry cleaner bags and bread bags, and again, their list on their website is
Mhm.
quite extensive. So if you're not already doing a method of collection of those items, I highly recommend taking a look on Kroger's website, and especially now that we've kind of got some vouched evidence that it is truly recycled and made into something new. That's good to know that it's not made into new grocery bags. I had been told that many years ago, and I guess I've kind of just kept that in my language.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
yeah, I'm gonna do a
Yeah,
little
so
further
composite
information.
decking isn't necessarily recyclable, but it does last a lot longer than
Okay.
regular lumber. So
Absolutely.
so yeah, I will forward those two things that I've received to the whole group and include you, Laura and Karen Brown.
Nice.
A lot of people don't know that at Target, if you use your own bag, they give you, it's like a 5 cent credit per bag, which
Mhm.
really isn't enough. But maybe if places like the other grocery stores, like Kroger, did that and maybe say 10 cents a bag,
Mhm.
it might make a difference and people think twice about picking up the grocery store bags.
Yeah, it sounds like they do plan on implementing something that goes along with Kroger rewards. You know, a lot of people have the app with the coupons and stuff. So I think anything they do will probably be along those lines. I'd take
Kroger
some gas points or something.
Kroger
Yeah.
used to do that. They used to have rebates.
Mm-hmm.
It was like
I think
three
I remember.
cents. Yeah, it was like it was like three or 5 cents, but they did do it and they got rid of it because it was
Yeah.
too cost prohibitive on their part.
Yeah.
Yeah, I also thought about how difficult a lot of these may be to implement because now pretty much every grocery store you go to has the self checkout.
Yeah, it's kind of on the honor system, I guess, if you say you have your bags.
I think most of them have some sort of a camera on you, not that they get you for a 5 cent credit, but maybe it would just make people think about it a little bit more.
Yeah. All right. Onward to just again talking about tanglers. This picture here just shows you how soft plastics can wrap around our gears, and this is the result of it, right? These are our team members having to actually get into the machinery when it's powered down and locked, but very time consuming and a safety risk, right? So just really wanting to highlight the importance and avoidance of tanglers. I know we've already talked about it, but again, Karen had made this nice visual here of just kind of best practices. We do encourage lids to stay on the containers. So it's, as you can see, small lids here. Again, we're sorting by size and shape. So if you were to just toss this small plastic lid directly into your recycle bin, separate from the actual container, it does make it challenging for it to get in the right place. It might run through the sort system correctly, but it's small. If anything is less than a 2-inch diameter, it has a higher chance of following through the cracks than getting to where it belongs. So that's why we really educate to leave your lids on your containers, just again to help ensure that it gets to the right place. But also, it also helps prevent some contamination, right? As I mentioned, we don't require things to be rinsed out. And so if, let's say there's some residual milk in this bottle here, by putting the lid back in place, it helps prevent that bit of liquid from rolling around and getting all over all the paper that you also have in your recycle bin. So again, twofold for our reasoning. It's not necessarily a deal breaker, but it is certainly helpful. Now, the only exception to that rule is on metal lids on a glass jar, like you can see here from jelly or like pickles fall in that category too, where it's a metal lid, but a glass jar. It is best to separate the two of those. Again, maybe in this instance, nice to rinse out your jelly jar because we know that's all a bit can be easily sticky, but maybe not. And it's not going to be anything that we're going to be, you know, having any level of, well, no fine, as we were just talking about financial incentives. There wouldn't be any fine for rinsing out, you're not rinsing out a container, but just kind of using your best judgment there. All right. And again, as we've talked about, residual is fine. Even peanut butter jars, that's another common one that we get asked about, because we've all tried to rinse a peanut butter jar before and it doesn't budge, and that's fine. Again, just tuck the label, or excuse me, put the lid on and toss it in your bin and it'll be fine. This pizza box here is nice to again see the amount of grease that you see at the bottom of a box. Again, totally acceptable. Good recyclable plastic, or goodness, recyclable paper that we want to receive. But again, just removing any actual food or dipping sauce that may still be in the box. All right. And then the Recycle Coach app. This is a really great tool that's available for Louisville Metro. Well, it's available for anybody to just download the app or use on the website. It is, in theory, I guess, geared to Louisville Metro acceptable materials, but it kind of helps answer for private waste haulers lists as well, right, Karen? It's kind of geared
Yeah.
to fall for everybody.
Yeah, and ours is for Louisville. So when you get the app, it's an international app, but you would type in your address, or choose Louisville, I should say. Other cities have it, but theirs looks different because they might have different accepted items lists. So so we have this one. It is, and most of our residential material goes to WestRock, and so it's mostly just based on their accepted list. Rumpke does get some of our material from Rumpke customers, so there might be a little blurb in there on a couple specific items that might mention that it depends on your hauler, but for the most part, it's the same. This app is huge as far as their database, and so if anyone ever plays around with it or searches an item and sees something that doesn't seem quite right, or it could be a little confusing, or maybe something has changed, I can edit that. But I will tell you, it is a huge job to look through it and make sure it's all right. So I always tell people that are kind of, you know, partners or whatever, like, hey, just tell me, because if you notice anything that you think could use an edit, it's pretty easy. It's just hard for me to search through it all the time and double check it. Sometimes because it's I think they kind of have, I think it's based on what people search. So so maybe some kind of new type of packaging comes into the world, it'll all of a sudden be part of the system because people are typing it in, but it may not have good info. It might say call call for information or so. And I would never want anyone to call for information. So so anyway, if you ever come across anything that you think could use an edit, just tell me and I would love to do that. And that's the What Goes Where search tool, which is useful for anyone in Louisville. We do have a waste collection calendar, but currently Urban Services District are the only addresses that are loaded into that. Although I do put, and I think I need to for this year, I don't have them up yet, but I put our pop-up drop-off events on the calendar. So even if you live outside of the Urban Services District, some events I might be able to put some of those events on the calendar, or drop-off opportunities that are different than pop-ups. So and then you can set reminders for anything that's on the calendar. And if you have the actual smartphone app, you could receive push notifications. And those are typically going to be, let's say a holiday causes some of our drop-off locations to be closed. So I would maybe send that out. What's great is if maybe there's a weather event and it caused our waste collection to not be able to finish a route. So I can put that out just to those people on that day. Like if it happened on a Friday and anybody who has any waste collection on Friday, I can, or even specific to yard, like garbage versus recycling and yard waste. So, so it's a great way for you to get real-time updates. And I always tell people, number one, it doesn't take up much space on your phone. Some people are worried about storage space. And also I don't really send that many notifications out, so you don't have to worry about me like constantly spamming and popping up on your phone. I really just use it for things that people need to know, as far as the scheduling.
I find it really useful because there are a lot of cans or containers that you look and it says it's not recyclable. And I think, oh, wait a minute, I'm sure that is. And then when I pull it up there, it turns out that it is. And one of those is the Pringles cans. The Pringles cans say on there, this is not recyclable. And I know that Karen's explained to me before, that's because that's in different areas, it's more general. So for stuff like that, it's really useful. I use it all the time.
Yeah, and sometimes packaging, I love how packaging is, they're starting to put more information on packages. And sometimes it just says check locally if it's maybe an item that's not widely accepted. So that's where the recycle coach comes in handy. And yeah, I know, and Laura, if you want to speak on Pringles cans, that's kind of a new in the
It
past
is.
couple of years added. And I know
Yeah.
when that Sonico, or however you say it, that makes the packaging, approached me, it sounded like a lot of facilities accept it because of the metal, but
Oh, that's
in
interesting.
it,
Well, we want it for the fiber.
exactly. I
And
thought,
yes, Sue, I appreciate you calling that one out. I really smiled over here, and I apologize, everybody. My camera tends to time out after so much time. So, anyway, I really smiled when you said Pringles because I actually think it was in 2022, maybe 21,
Mhm.
that we had done enough testing on it to confirm that in our equipment at our facility in Louisville, when we receive Pringles cans, they do sort and land in our mixed paper pile, into which case then they're going on to the WestRock paper mills. So again, we were able to internally test and confirm that they were able to be recycled as a fiber and not cause any contamination or issue for the paper mill. So to be clear, we're only recovering the fiber out of that container, and that metal bottom is, and possibly the plastic lid. Those two items, if they make it onto the paper mill, they will be pulled out as landfill waste. In the pulping process, all of that water and fiber gets mixed together to ultimately mix to a point to where it's ultimately this like liquid slurry kind of mix. And then all of the non-fiber material falls to the bottom of that pulping tank, and it gets cleaned out and cleared out using specific equipment. There's actually two methods of collect or cleaning, if you will, in the pulping process. Metals most often get wrapped together in the baling wire and kind of pulled out in this like twisted string-like purge. And then the plastics tend to be the materials that sink to the bottom and ultimately get literally removed during cleaning process. So just again, to be very clear, it's not that that metal is getting recycled, but it's not enough of a material to be a detriment to the paper mills. So we're able to recycle those Pringles cans for paper. So it's interesting to hear other facilities are taking them for the metal part, and I'm guessing, maybe that's in the melting process that paper just burns away, I guess. But again, usually or historically, that has been a difficult item because technically it's like three different types of materials. But again, WestRock has confirmed and worked for many years now just fine in receiving Pringles or other brands, but very same packaging. I don't mean to be brand biased, but it's just easy to recognize, right? So yeah, we were very happy when that was confirmed, and then happily shared that with Karen. So she updated the Recycle Coach app, and
Yeah.
yeah.
And that another similar packaging, I think maybe happened a little while before that, but like the Tetra Pak cartons was another similar issue where I guess there's just
Right.
innovation at the paper mills, right? To be able to get out some of the plastic coating.
The plastic. That's right. Yep. So again, and that's an important part just across the board. We can use some examples for most recent expansion of materials, but the recycling industry is always changing and evolving with the intention to help make materials easier to recover. Again, whether that's our equipment improving or again, the cleaning process improving, the mills kind of doing improvements has really made a big game changer on acceptable materials. But that is the goal, right? Is we can't just keep doing the same thing year over year and expecting to really make a long-term impact. So again, I'm proud to say WestRock works hard to innovate. And on the opposite side of things, they've also made some pretty firm stances on things that they don't intend to innovate on, like styrofoam. As I mentioned, it's a really difficult item to be able to sort properly. But the decision was made several years ago that WestRock wasn't even going to go down the path of, even if there was technology that became available, we are not investing in that because, again, it's that idea, as we've kind of already all talked about, financial incentive makes a big impact, especially when it comes to business. And we don't want to invest to then encourage a very challenging to recycle material to become more recyclable. We would rather continue to encourage people to do fiber-based packaging to then ensure that it can, be recycled. What is it? 4 to 7 times is the standard for any type of fiber. So that's, again, something I really respect, that as much as we're willing to grow and innovate and expand, we also have made some stances to say we're not going to help move the opposite direction. Yeah. And then I'll also kind of use, again, I know I'm slightly harping on pizza boxes, it sounds like today, but that was also some great work that WestRock led with our paper mills to really evaluate the grease and cheese and if that in pizza boxes is truly a contaminant or not. Because again, for so many years, it has been something that has just been ingrained in people that pizza boxes are not recyclable due to the grease and cheese. And so, yeah, we proudly worked hard to do many tests and even vet that data from a third-party entity to really vouch to confirm that, again, it's a non-issue for the paper mills and we can and do want to recycle pizza boxes. Great. Okay. And I think
Laura,
I got
are
one
you?
more. Oh,
Oh,
yes. Go right
I
ahead.
was going to ask if you're allowed to share anything about your next pizza box project.
Not quite yet, but soon
Okay.
will be. Yes, we're continuing to expand that pizza box effort, and there will be, I can at least say this, that there will be a great level of communication and effort to help spread that message. It's kind of something that we have done the study on. We are verbally encouraging everybody to, but now working with a partner to help spread that message a bit wider. But that's as much as I can say at this point in time.
Cool. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. And sorry, everybody.
That's okay.
But yeah. So that was the end of, now we're kind of just left on questions here. I do want to say this is one of those scannable things. So you can take a picture of my screen here to get the Recycle Coach app. If anybody wants that, I'll leave it up here on the screen for a moment. But then, yeah, just really want to open it up to any other questions or discussion.
I have a question. I think I might know the answer to it, but I wanted to ask.
Sure.
If so from a recycling perspective, right? So if I have a choice to purchase a plastic container versus a glass container,
Mhm.
from your perspective, which one would you prefer, or which one you think is the better option?
Yeah. Well, I'm going to give it an answer, but I'm going to put the caveat to say it's me with a little bit of a personal bias of glass. I feel that glass is always best because it can be recycled indefinitely. And as much as we do want and do recycle plastics, plastics are just a real challenge. And I'm personally an advocate of you vote with your dollar. So if you're making a financial investment choice of a product to buy, I think we vote with our dollar to say we prefer glass, or we prefer paper, or we prefer metal. Anything over plastic is where I'm an advocate for. I do think that we as consumers need to move away from plastics for so many reasons.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah,
Yeah.
I totally agree. I just wasn't sure. I knew from the manufacturing perspective, but I didn't think about afterwards. Like, just
Yeah.
wanted to check that was also the case, for
Yeah.
recycling. But
Again,
awesome.
we're happy to recycle all of it. but
Mm-hmm.
if we were to kind of put it in order, fiber first,
Yeah.
because again, WestRock as a company wants to make you more paper products. And so that would, I'll answer it in that spirit, but then metal and
Right.
glass just have the higher recyclability life cycle. So we would encourage those two by far over plastic.
Laura, I appreciate you saying that, because that's kind of what Karen and I have been teaching, that those materials that can be recycled indefinitely instead of
Yeah.
plastic, which has a, you know, a life cycle, you know, it has an
That's right.
ending.
Yeah, it does have an ending, and so does fiber. There's no denying. Again, it can only be made into smaller and smaller fiber-based products. So that does also have a shelf life, so to say, in comparison to metals and glass. But
Well, I have a question for you. You
Mhm.
know, when you talk about how fiber gets smaller and smaller when you recycle it more and more, how can you tell when plastic loses its polymerization? I mean, you know how it can only be recycled, say, 4 times because it loses its structural integrity. So
Yeah.
how how can they tell that?
Well, I don't think it's being able to tell that necessarily, to be like, okay, because again, keep in mind, let's just take the example of WestRock has shipped a bale of PET water bottles to an end user, and one of our end users makes carpet backing for
Okay.
that, and so they'll take a a truckload of bales from us, and they'll also take a truckload of bales from, I don't know, another recycler in California, and that facility will take the respective amount of bales and, quote, like, make a correct recipe for the product that they're making. And I've got to imagine that different carpets, different, textures, colors, all the different things would then require a different level of backing. I don't know that for certain, Diane. I'm a little out of my expertise when answering this question, because I don't know the product creation line as well. But I've got to imagine it's a matter of, like, they know based off of the recipe that they're creating. So it's not so much about that individual bottle has ran its 4 life cycle course. It's more of like the bale, how good does it look? How,
Okay.
or
Yeah,
maybe they even use equipment to scan it too. That's a possibility.
I
But
can
they're
actually speak to
making a
that
mix.
as well.
I'm sorry, Vivian, go right ahead.
Sorry. I just
Please.
wanted to, I've worked and we talk a lot about I agree with you about the recyclability of glass. Um, carbon neutrality point, glass is very heavy, and it takes a lot of input to transport around. For instance, if you work that's something that we think a lot is how much carbon does it take or our product rather. It speaks slightly to the recyclability question. So like one of the things that I think was touched on was that the clarity is lost over the recycling process. So for instance, if a brand wants to avoid a cloudy look, for instance, if it's like a tea that you're packaging and you want to show off the color of the tea in the plastic container, you might not want to go for a recycled bottle because the clarity of the bottle will obscure the color of the liquid to the consumer, or at least that's from the brand perspective. So I guess just to enforce what was being discussed, that I think it's a lot of times a brand decision instead of an actual material viability. It might be perfectly appropriate to use a recycled material, but how does the brand want the product to look to the consumer? And those are, a lot of times brands are going to opt for virgin plastic, which might look a little bit more, shiny.
Yeah.
I have a lot to add to this as a manufacturer.
Thanks. Please go ahead.
So Vivian, I don't know if you recall what I do, but I actually do custom packaging for some of the biggest names in the world. Um, and so and I have so much to add to this. So as far as sustainability is concerned, a lot um, of larger businesses, and I have several I can name, are switching to biodegradable plastics, which are not see-through at all, but they're considered biodegradable. They paste it all over the bags. And then when it comes to virgin plastics, the way that plastics nowadays are made, you can do something that's considered a cheater plastic, and it's made with 10% post-consumable plastics that is blended in with the virgin resin that in instances in like California would make it a green product. So it's not necessarily 100% virgin. A lot of the plastic manufacturers in Texas are actually um, diligently trying to get away from virgin plastics when possible.
Yeah, and I totally agree with that, Susan. I think there's a lot of cool opportunities and new products coming out. There's like the seaweed based films that are coming out that look really great. So yeah, I think that the bio-based plastics and compostable materials are definitely like emerging, and even something that brands might select as sort of a strategic move. So I definitely discounted that in my comments.
Yeah, the seaweed based is really nice because it can be composted, backyard composted, and it doesn't have to go to an industrial compost. And I really appreciate that as well. I was thinking the problem with plastic too is that when it is recycled, it all will end up in the landfill. If it's being recycled into carpet or padding, it cannot be recycled again. It has to go to the landfill. No matter how many times it gets recycled, it will go to the landfill. I'm sorry, people are trying to call me. And that's why, what was I going to say now? I'm sorry. That's why I think it's so important to be able to reuse those materials that have a much longer shelf life, like metal, aluminum, and glass. Even if people prefer the clear glass over the glass that has different colors. So thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Thank you all. Again, great discussion. And I think just to kind of wrap that to say, there's so many aspects to sustainability and what's the right decision. And so I just encourage everybody here to not be overwhelmed by that. Just as Vivian highlighted, glass, of course, is heavier to transport. So by using glass, are we creating more emissions by having to have 2 trucks in what could be shipped on 1 truck if it's in plastic bottles instead of glass bottles? Like, there is a reality to all of the decisions that we make, right? That's why local's always better. So it's not easy, and there's not always one straightforward right answer. So again, that's kind of why I even answered your question, Autumn, with like, well, my preference is glass, right? So it does come down to personal decisions and just evaluating the choices you have and what you feel like is going to make the best sense. But I always encourage, be open to changing that over time too, right? It might be the right decision for right now in 2024. But again, as we just mentioned, there are so many innovative things that are coming out onto the marketplace that can make things better in 5 years or even hopefully less. And again, you aren't expected to do it all, but by doing what you can and sharing the information to other people to empower them to make better choices, all of that makes an impact. So it's all about progress, not perfection. So yeah, I'm happy to continue the conversation. Again, if there's any more questions or anything, otherwise, Karen, I'll let you carry on for the remainder of the class.
Yeah. Anybody else? And we have the Sign Up Genius going for the tours for the year. And of course, Laura, if anything comes up with your vacations and stuff, I know sometimes we change dates, so just let
I
me
got
know.
Karen now. We should be set. We should be
Oh, yeah,
consistently
okay.
good, right? There's two
Very
of us
good.
for tours.
Okay.
Thank you.
Even better. Yay. Well, great. So I do have that out. There's a few people. I don't think our ambassadors, I don't think anybody has signed up yet. So that's a reminder to our new group. Make sure you pick a date. We have that the other tours, it's harder to schedule, and I just sort of pick a date and go with it. And then maybe do another if we can, but it can be a little more difficult to get landfill. Matt at Smith Creek is always very good about letting us come whenever, but we do avoid him in the spring because it's his busiest season. So we'll get to him, and that's actually next week's topic. Matt Smith will be here for Smith Creek, and Brian Barnes from U of L's composting, community composting program. So,
Nice.
so we'll talk dirt next week. But so if there's no other questions for Laura and Karen, I'll just say thank you. And
Lovely.
if
Thank
there's
you all
any
very much.
follow-up things, I know I just email you all anytime I have questions. So I'll continue to do that. And you can go ahead and drop off, but we'll stay on just for a few more minutes. So
All right.
thank
Thank
you.
you, everybody, again. Take care.
Now, I know we last time this kind of happened where the bulk of the class was our guest speaker, which is great because it's really good conversation. And I had started to share a few things about large item pickup. Hang on, I have that pulled up again, or I did. Let me open that back up. And I'm just going to go ahead. I'm going to go ahead and kind of go back to where I was, I think, and just sort of wrap up the whole large item pickup system, just so I know that I've at least made you all aware of everything. And then there were a few other things that I was going to do. So I'll just spend a few minutes doing that just to make sure I get that covered. So let me share the PowerPoint. All right, hopefully you can see that. So yeah, switching gears here. This is, I don't know where exactly I left off. I tried to sort of skip through real quick, but the large item pickup has changed as of last year to an appointment system for urban services district. Now, private waste haulers should offer something. Some may not at all. I don't know, but it's different based on who your contracted waste hauler is. And let me just pop that up. There we go. So if you live in the urban services district, you can certainly get on the 311 app, make a large item appointment, or click that button to do so. And there are some things that tell you instructions and here's what you can't do. And then there's a drop-down list and you choose your items through that. So we really encourage people to use that drop-down if it's a couch, a table, a desk, whatever it is, just choose the quick item there. The other items are okay to use, but they might require a description, which takes a little more admin time to get that onto the list for the crew. So it's just best to use the things if it's listed there. It'd be silly to put other furniture item and then type in recliner when we have that on the drop-down list. Then basically you got to set your items out the day before, or 6 a.m. if you get up that early and want to put it out the day of. It needs to be out there by 6 a.m. I had somebody ask, they didn't get it. I put it out at 7:30, and I don't know how they missed the 6 a.m. thing, but he was really shocked that we come that early, but we do. Only the approved items will get collected. We've had people say, I had set out my 4 items, but somebody came and took a couple. So I put a couple different things out because they were just like, as long as it's 4. But if it's not on the trip card or whatever, that's what we call it. But if it's not on their list, they aren't going to pick it up. And then you can make an appointment up to once per week for 4 items, and then you're not supposed to put items anywhere else. So don't import your trash to an address. Sometimes people drive by a pile and they're like, I'm going to make an appointment. You could make an appointment on behalf of someone else, but if it is not legal items, if it's like a dumped pile that's not acceptable, then it's better to report that as a set out violation. But if it happens to be like there's a mattress that's behind this house, it's been there for weeks, heck, just make the appointment and we'll get it. I've done that in my neighborhood actually, when it's literally very simple things to get picked up. I know you kind of hinder that education process, but sometimes if something sits there long enough, you just want it gone. So it is possible to do that. You just have to put in an email. We always say, don't ask if you have the internet, like, because you can get internet in lots of places, or don't ask if you have a computer. Just ask people if they have an email address. If they have an email address, then they can make an appointment. If they don't have an email address, yeah, you might have some issues. And 311 will make appointments over the phone if you do not have an email address. And I think I got to this slide maybe briefly last time, but we do have these door hangers. If there's an issue like that they couldn't collect it for some reason, they're supposed to leave this door hanger and mark off what the problem was. And then I think we skipped through these pretty fast last week, but good appointments look very neat. It's a pile of up to 4 large items. That's what the system is for. Is not for this. This is really bad. The one on the left could have been okay if they had not put so many items out at once, and the carpet's supposed to be rolled. It should look much clearer that you have 4 items. The one on the right, if it was a piece of furniture, we added the word assembled to some of our drop-down list because we want to make sure people realize we are picking up items. We are not picking up a pile of wood that was an item at one time. So if you broke something up so small, then you might slowly have to put that in your regular garbage. But that is obviously too many items, even if it were eligible. And then blocked by parked vehicles. They cannot safely get the stuff. They are good crews. They will drive by again, and see if the cars have moved. But eventually they might have to just say, sorry, we didn't get it because there were cars blocking it. And this is just a picture showing how they maneuver this and pick it up and crush it. And it's crazy. Oh, and at the very end, I remember Diane went to this slide last time that I just remember this coming through as something they wanted to get picked up. And I just thought, oh my goodness, like there's no way that was in your house. I don't even know how they got that to the alley. They're like big gym mats. So I don't know how he ever got rid of those things, but we obviously can't take something that's going to fill the truck as one appointment. So that was a weird one. This is our ordinance that for project pickup, that's in the ordinance, that is the term for bulky waste pickup. And then these are the things that are not allowed based on ordinance. So it's not just that we don't want to pick certain things up. It is in our laws, our city laws say that we don't pick them up through that. So, and this conversation usually leads to illegal dumping conversation because people know like, oh, in my, near my house, there's been things that are dumped and I don't know if, what happened or what am I supposed to do, especially if it's on your own property. So I once had like 3 tires just all of a sudden were behind my house in the alley. So I at least for that, could make an appointment for that to be picked up. So, you know, if it's acceptable, just get it picked up. You can still report it if you want to kind of be in the system as an illegal dump report, but if it's bags of trash that were dumped, that is important to report it as illegal dumping. Our enforcement team goes out and looks at stuff. If it has any identifying information within the material, they can actually enforce. If someone dumped tree debris like sticks and brush and whatever, obviously there's no identifying information there. So there's not much else you can do except have to get it disposed. And if it's on your property, it's probably going to be up to you to get it out of there. It's a bummer, but it's like the opposite of things being stolen from you. It's your responsibility to figure that out. So if you witness it, or if you have security cameras with any kind of video of a person, a vehicle that either we can see the license plate, or maybe the vehicle has very identifiable dents or markings, they can use that also. So the opposite, I'll talk more about illegal dumping in a second, but the opposite of that is a set out violation. So we don't want people to report illegal dumping if they just basically cleared out a room of their house and dumped it into the alley behind their own house. That's not illegal dumping. That is a set out violation. So it's important to understand the difference so that we can, so it gets reported the right way. So illegal dumping is putting stuff that is onto someone else's property. A set out violation is setting things out on your own property that is not compliant with our ordinances. I basically just said that. If you have a witness, if you have video or pictures or somehow identifying information of someone illegal dumping, we do have a witness report. It's a form online on our website right here, louisvilleky.gov/illegal dumping. And that is helpful. It goes straight to our enforcement team. So it's a little different than 311, and you can upload video or pictures, and that's what we would use to try to catch the culprit. And so an officer will go to the reported dump site. They might investigate the pile for other information. If there's pictures and video, they use that. If we can catch the vehicle, find the vehicle that was used, per our ordinance, we have the authority to issue a citation for the dumped items and cleanup fee, and then also impound the vehicle. And then they have to pay an impound fee to get their vehicle after 72 hours. So that usually adds up to about $1,000. Many things that are dumped, about 90% of materials that are dumped could have been dropped off for free at the Waste Reduction Center or using our large item pickup system. The other 10%, yeah, maybe it would have cost you $60 to dump it legally, but if you're caught, it can add up to usually about $1,000, and the trouble of having no vehicle for 72 hours. So it's really important to understand the implications of illegal dumping, and it's horrible. It's a horrible thing. It's bad for our community. It's bad for the environment. We really want to stop it. And this being able to impound vehicles is very helpful. I know it still happens a lot. We still have to deal with it, but we've actually had other cities find our website and see what we do, and they don't have that system. And they, like Pete and I spoke virtually at a California conference about illegal dumping just to share what we do, for example. So so it's somewhat unique, and it is helpful. So in some cases, unfortunately, it could be the property owner, though, that has to clean up after a dumping. These are some slides that I took from another presentation. We do have cameras around town. that we monitor. It's another big job to keep up with the cameras. And so that's why we love it whenever we get even more footage from citizens, because we have, I think, 80 cameras, but it's a huge job to go through the pictures. And there's only some places are not good for where cameras go. You can't put a camera just anywhere. They get triggered by movement, so you can't really have them on a busy road or anything like that, or you just get too many pictures that aren't dumping. So there are locations where cameras don't work. Sorry, this is a little redundant because I think I grabbed slides from a couple different presentations, but I already talked about impounding, and the last thing I had on here was the pop-up drop-off report, but I think I'll just email that because we've talked about that system before, and it's very successful, and we hope that you all can either participate in one or volunteer at one, just so that you can experience it and know it's a great service for our community, and it is kind of in response to how much dumping happens, because we want to be able to show we are giving people tons of opportunities to do things for free, to get rid of waste for free or in an affordable way, but it just has to be used. We just need to get our citizens to use the services that we provide. So it's just about 10 till, but does anybody have any other questions or even discussion? Anything?
I have a question about
Mhm.
okay, you all sent an email. You said that the sign up for WestRock the tour was on it. Is that right?
There's a link. I can send it again if maybe it got
Okay,
lost
I feel like the
a-
link is not showing me that, and I'm kind of confused. So
Okay. Usually the link is a Sign Up Genius link and it says WestRock in it toward the end.
hmm.
And that's what it should be. But I'll send it again because maybe
Okay.
maybe something happened and that's why
I think
no one
the
signed
one
up.
I'm seeing is it's just showing me Paris Town Garden Show and Festival of Flowers, but I don't see anything for WestRock.
Okay.
But maybe.
And then that original paper I gave you all, which I think I still need to send it in a PDF form for those that didn't come in person. But there was like a method of how to look for the signups that we have. So we basically, just so you know how we do it, we usually keep one sign up for like events, and we'll just keep adding to that same sign up. And then the WestRock has its own separate sign up, and it has all of them from March to November, because I invite other people besides you guys to that. So that's a separate link. But yeah, I'll send that again and make sure everybody has that. And then once we get dates for the landfill tour and Smith Creek tour, I will make a sign up for that just so I can keep track of who's coming.
Is it also, are these tours and field trips, are they required for this training? I couldn't remember.
No, I mean, we really highly encourage people to come, and if we have a hard time, I can book more than one tour if we have, some different types of schedules, but they are always during the work day, just because they are businesses that don't open up for us to come on a weekend. So it's not required, because I know it can be hard to get away, but just highly encouraged.
I really want to go, but I know how crazy our spring gets. So
Yeah. Yeah.
we'll see.
Well, we can certainly try to do more than one, like I said, or in a more of a less busy time, because I know it gets busy. All right. Well, if there's nothing else, I will go ahead and end the meeting. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you.